Opioid Project has turned into something much bigger than what it was initially conceived to be. So right now, the Opioid Project has 3 different phases to it. The first is running workshops in relationship and in partnership with community groups around Massachusetts. We run workshops for family members, first responders, people who have survived overdose, and anyone affected by the opioid crisis. We run art and storytelling workshops. They're 4-hour workshops, and the idea is to use the art and stories that comes out of each of the workshops to raise awareness, to combat stigma, and to talk about addiction and a lot of the cofactors like poverty and mental health issues. So we work with the individuals. The goal is to really work with the individuals to help make them feel loved and in community with other people who have shared a lot of the same experiences but may feel isolated by those experiences. And then also the goal is to give the community that we partner with traveling opioid exhibitions, so that they can bring it around to different places in their community to raise awareness about the issues. So that might be a high school, it might be a hospital, could be a mayor's office, but it's to expose people to the different stories and the complexity of social narrative that happens in relationship to the crisis.
I took my son to California when he was like 12, and his grandmother gave him $25 to spend. And he saw a Hare Krishna guy was asking for money, and my son wanted to give him all $25. I feel like that story expresses who Jordan was. He always was there for anybody and everybody, always put himself last. I have hope I can learn to be like Jordan.
I have a daughter who I adopted after her mother died of heroin overdose and HIV in 1998. So Taylor's she's 26, she's 3 years sober herself, so she's lived through dealing with the complexity of drug use and trying to get clean. And so I know what that feels like, or from her perspective what that feels like, and what it feels like for a parent to be love their child so much and feel so out of control around helping them heal themselves.
This is, potential that's been arrested in its prime. Parents have lost children. Children have lost parents or have been raised without parents. This is something that should have been addressed a long time ago. Big Pharma made sure that it didn't come to our attention until it was very difficult to get the genie back into the box, and now we're all working very hard, not only in Framingham but in this country, to get that genie back in the box.
I saw this when it was over in the Natick Public Library. I think it was a very moving project, and it's a way just to get the message to people. So I think anybody who comes here and sees this project and hears the stories behind it really is going to realize what a difficult problem it is and how we all need to get together to solve this problem. And I think in Framingham we're starting well on our way to do that. When I started over in Natick, I dialed the number and heard the audio behind the pictures, and it is really just moving as though the experience tragic, really, in other ways that people had, and it is a tragedy. It's some great stories, some very vibrant people who are taken way too young from this epidemic.
I came to know the Opioid Project through my daughter, who had met Annie, who was one of the co-creators with Nance Marks, and I went to see the exhibit in Newton, and it moved me. It very emotional because I was dealing with my son's addiction, but also I found that there was hope, and I wanted people's stories needed to be told.
He was a thinker. He could think things through and figure things out. He was great with people, always great with people, even when he was, on the drugs. He was a charmer, and he was funny. The last thing I said to him was, you've got everything before you. And he says, Mom, I've got everything to live for. And when I came home, he was still alive, but I couldn't wake him up. And he ended up being in a coma for three days, and we had to make that decision to take him off.
this basically blew my family apart because for a number of years we weren't aware of it. And things were going on in an undercurrent, and I have two other sons surviving, and they were younger than Tristan, and so they felt the ripples of his behavior, and a lot went on behind the scenes. And by the time we found out that he was using opiates, he had gone to heroin, and I got him into rehab, and I thought, oh, that'll fix it. That'll fix it. And it's not like that, you know. It's not a quick fix. I think that creating this piece of art helped me to just remember him, remember the good and the bad, the pain and the happiness, and mostly it's all about the love, because, you know, if I didn't love him, I wouldn't hurt so much. And so that's what it's all about, is love.
I think art helps you heal in a variety of ways. The person who gets to make the piece, for a lot of folks, it's to survive the experience with a loved one, you have to shut down inside to a lot of feelings, and yet they're bottled up inside of you. And the chance to actually make a piece of art where you're actually going through pictures and you're going through photographs and you're dealing with memories, and often is an opportunity to lift up stories that you've had to bury down, which is the beauty of that person. Because stigma forces you, as a parent in particular, let's say, people force you into the box of, I have a child who's died of opioid use. And nobody asks you about the beauty of that person or the love in your family. So by making art, it allows you to bring back the part of that person that you lost to the epidemic, because society doesn't know how to relate to people except in small boxes. And unfortunately, this is the box of stigma. Stigma puts you in a box because people don't know how to deal with death, and then they don't know how to deal with addiction, and then they don't know how to deal with mental health, and then they don't know how to deal with poverty. And any of those things all together conspire to make you feel distant from yourself and distant from your community.
We want to make people feel comfortable that they can approach us, they can seek help from us, and there's so many partnerships here that we can just lead people in the right direction. All of our officers are trained with Narcan. We've used Narcan for a while. It's obviously helped, but we want to do more than just use Narcan. We want to, dig deeper than that and try to help people with the opioid addiction, not just by hitting them with Narcan, but trying to give them outreach and other avenues.
I hope that what people get out of this exhibit is the chance to humanize both the people who made the art and humanize the people who are lost and being celebrated in the art. I hope that they get a chance to understand that this is a very complex social narrative, that diseases are complicated, and that our country in particular likes to flatten everything out. Like, everybody is bad if they do drugs, or everyone is, if you're mentally ill, you do bad things. It's so much more complex, and human beings are human beings, and they're lovable no matter where they've come from. And I hope that people are able to confront some of their own internal fears by looking at this, but also then maybe reach out and put a hand back to somebody else when they leave here.